ReZero Web Novel Volume 39. I do not want to be overdramatic because, as you know, these reviews are very grounded. I'm a very grounded person. If I were a Pokemon, I would be a ground type. I would be Groudon. And yet, it must be said, Arc 9 is absolute peak! I don't need to see anything else. I have made up my mind already. Wrap it up. I don't even need to see the rest of the books because I already know by the time this is finished, Arc 9 will be an absolute masterpiece. So without further ado, let's delve right into peak fiction. This volume, much like many introductory volumes before it, is mostly a setup volume. It wraps up the aftermath of the previous arc and sets up the pieces for this new one. It is not uncommon for the first ReZero book of a volume to be slightly less eventful and more exposition driven, and then right at the end to have a dark twist to grab you by the metaphorical balls to get you to buy the next book. And the perfect example of this is volume 16. That is mostly wholesome slice of life, and then right at the end Shiryu appears to mess things up. This volume also follows that formula, but this one had the most sudden and exponential escalation of narrative drama I have seen in probably the entire series. This volume goes from 0 to 100 very fast, and once it goes into overdrive, it never lets go off the gas and just keeps that pace throughout. If I had to choose the best introductory volume for any arc, I still think that volume 21 is arguably the best one because it is more consistent throughout. However, I will say, even though Patarash's diet plan was very fun, or should I say horrifying, even though that was a very crazy moment, I still think that no matter what happened in volume 21, even though it was more consistent, this one, volume 39, peaked way harder. This book can be summarized as having two halves. The first one is the aftermath of what happened in Vollachia, and the second one is Al's grand betrayal. So let's start with the first half. I am conflicted about this as a reader and as a fan of ReZero because on one hand, I think that there were way too many open plot points from Vollachia that we had to close, and it would not be satisfying to just dismiss them or ignore them or just put them in a side story that likely very few people would read. I think that we had to get closure on a lot of these things. At the same time, on the other hand, I think that we were in Vollachia from volumes 26 to 38. That is 12 volumes. So I think I and a lot of the other readers were hungry for something fresh, something new, and to finally move on from Vollachia. And we did get a new direction to the story that I love very much. I am absolutely in love with where the story is going. However, we also did spend half the book still on Vollachia, and it felt like it was somehow dragging and this whole Vollachia saga would never end. And this is coming from someone that really enjoyed Vollachia, at least a lot more than most of fans I see online. So I'm very conflicted on this. If I were Tappei's editor and I were to give advice on how to structure the story, I will say that he should probably cut some of the bloat in volume 38, which I mentioned in the last review, and put most of the epilogue of Vollachia in volume 38, leaving this volume with a clean fresh start to arc 9. The main advantage of this from a commercial standpoint would be for old readers that perhaps dropped out at Vollachia that didn't enjoy that arc so much. They could start on this volume right away and not lose on that much context of many of the different characters. All they would need to know is obviously what happened to Priscilla. And for current readers as well, I think it would help diminish the exhaustion of staying in the same story arc for so long. Doing this, however, would mean that the final chapter of volume 38 would not be the beautiful Priscilla chapter that I loved so much, and it was such a poetic ending to that arc, and I understand that, and I'm very conflicted about this once again, but I think looking at the trade-offs, I think the pros outweigh the cons, and I think a fresh start for Arc 9 would be more than worth it. Now let's address what actually happened in the Vollachia Epilogue, starting off with Flop. Flop has got to be the character with the most game in the entire series. He is first acting as a wingman for his sister, generational wealth, lifetime protection, check, acquired, married into the imperial family, that's done with. And then he turns to Tarita, the leader of the Shoe Drac, this fierce woman, this exceptional hottie, and listen, to me Elsa will always be top one, that's just how I'm wired, hey, don't judge me, but still the Shoe Drac ladies, mamma mia, and he just bags her as well. This dude cannot be stopped. Everybody trying to look cool, people in Vollachia value being strong so much, and yet here it is, this dude with no special power, no special ability, just gets the woman, this exceptionally hot woman, to quit being the leader of the tribe, to abandon her tribe and go with him, just by spitting hard, cold game. And you just know that Tarita was melting with all of those lines Flop was giving. The dude is very smooth. Listen, from like a meta perspective as a reader, I think writing a character that is this much of a smooth player, that's kudos to the author, because that's very impressive. Even I was starting to feel like, damn, he does know how to make a lady feel nice, you know? But still, Flop just tore the house down. Tarita could not resist him. She wasn't just moist, it was the Niagara Falls down there. Anyway, generational performance by Flop. If he came to Lugunica, all of the romance storylines would be settled in less than 2 volumes, because he is the master of seduction. Not only is he good at bagging hotties for himself, he can also bag hotties for others, so the man cannot be stopped. Jokes aside, I don't know what is up with the O'Connell siblings, but both of their romance storylines just felt like they were dropped on me all of a sudden. They evolved very fast and concluded very fast as well. I think Tarita becoming the leader of the Shoe Drac and finding herself and overcoming her past was a great character arc for her. I think that some people may be disappointed that she sort of throws it all away at the last minute to go with Flop, but I do think it was clear from her character that she took the responsibility but never had any joy in being the leader necessarily, and I think that Mizelda better fits that role. So her going with Flop, I don't think in any way goes against what her character stood for, and I think it is a fitting ending, even if it feels somewhat rushed. Flop's wish was to enact revenge on the world by being kind and good in this world that is so cruel. So I think definitely the most efficient way of doing that is to just infiltrate the Imperial family. What he's thinking makes sense. I think it fits his character as well. I just wish, in going back to the light novels whenever I eventually do the loop back, I hope that the author adds more dialogue in. I hope that he makes these interactions seem a little bit more natural, more organic. I hope that the romance between Flop and Tarita, and also Vincent and Medium, I hope that the romance blossoms throughout the books instead of just being planted right at the last minute. Speaking of romance blossoming, Todd, my goat, gets his happy ending, and I am so happy for him as well. I think that he is a very rational man. Obviously, he does consider that Jamal being this close to the Emperor now would be very advantageous, but like Todd mentioned many times, he does not want any spotlight, any protagonism. He just wants to be left alone and live his life with his happy wife. And so I also think that this sudden escape and just disappearing from all of this chaos also really fits the character. The way this chapter was structured was also lovely, with us first focusing on Palaio, who, even after X5 and all of these volumes in Arc 8, nobody still cares about him. This has got to be one of the F-tier villains of ReZero, but anyway, no one cares about him, but the way he went out was very cool. You see that he's getting ambushed, he doesn't know who's doing it, who's behind this, and then the man, the myth, the legend, the GOAT, Todd, appears and obviously does his great catchphrase, "I won't wait," and then he just does business because Todd is a businessman. And I know some readers will perhaps be frustrated because they think that Todd never really got his comeuppance, and to that I say, I disagree. I'm happy. I'm happy that Todd is happy, because he is a very humble, hardworking, genuine, good man. Tell me right now one single morally questionable thing that Todd has ever done. Exactly, you can't, because Todd is great, Todd is love, Todd is life. He's just a humble, loving man that wants to do his job and provide for his loving wife. That's all he is, so he deserves all the happiness in the world. Todd did nothing wrong. Even though you guys know that I love Todd, he is one of my favorite characters, it is also my expectation that this is the last we see from him, that I don't think he will appear in the story again. I do expect that at some point there will be this big conflict and we will have this sort of Avengers Endgame moment where all the crew from Vollachia comes back to help, maybe even Vincent, Sassy, the Pleiades Battalion. I expect all of them to come back in a big moment in the story. However, I don't think Todd will be in that group. I don't think it fits his character. I think even though it is a bit bittersweet because I enjoyed him so much, I am content and at peace with this being the final we see from Todd. Todd wasn't flashy, he had no special powers, but he is truly to me one of the S-tier villains of ReZero. He massively carried Arc 7 for me, and whenever I think of Vollachia, I will always think about Todd. Another storyline I was pleasantly surprised with the conclusion of was the Pleiades Battalion. Like I mentioned, it felt like they were sort of narratively cast aside once the Emilia camp came into play, so it is nice for them to get this sort of elaborate farewell. I think throughout Arc 8 there was this palpable writing tension that you could see Tappei had, where he wanted to give more protagonism to the Pleiades Battalion because they were very relevant to Subaru in Arc 7, but at the same time he had to give the spotlight to the actual major player characters that most of them will be relevant throughout the story, while the Pleiades Battalion, we likely won't see them for a long while. So there was always this tension, and I think for better or for worse, Arc 7s and 8 were already too bloated, so I didn't mind that much that Tappei sort of took the spotlight away from him for an extended period of time, but I think he did well by giving them this more elaborate ending. The self-inflicted punishment that Subaru took from the Pleiades Battalion was his way of dealing with the pain from Priscilla's loss, but also his way of redeeming himself for having lied to this many people. And it is a very macho thing to do, it is very manly pride, like, huh, I will punch you and we will solve our issues this way, because we are men and we do not talk emotions out, we punch them out. And so as corny and as cheesy as it may sound, I think it really fits Subaru well, and above all, it fit this rough bunch of gladiators well, so I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that you could see that a lot of the members, most of the members even of the Pleiades Battalion, were very conflicted about this because they were following Subaru because he is Subaru, not necessarily because of his supposed ties to the Imperial family. So I enjoy this. I thought the dynamic was very entertaining. I thought it was a very good send-off because, as I mentioned, the Gladiator Island volume is one of my favorite volumes in the entire series, even if it is very much self-contained and perhaps doesn't have a lot of relevance to the overarching story of ReZero, but still I really enjoy that volume and I think this was a perfect send-off, and like I said, we will see these guys again eventually. The final noteworthy interaction I want to highlight is Vincent and Subaru, and their interaction perfectly summarizes their relationship and who they each are as people. Subaru deals with loss through self-punishment, while Vincent just drowns himself in his work. Subaru keeps regretting things, thinking about the past, what could have been, how he could have changed this, while Vincent knows there is no use and he just looks ahead to the future and keeps working towards it. Subaru is emotional, he screams, he cries, he makes a big scene, while Vincent just pleasantly smiles because he knows that Subaru, his friend, can let out the emotions that he as the Emperor cannot. Subaru wants to apologize, but Vincent knows there is nothing to apologize for because Priscilla recognized Subaru as a true knight, and Vincent, even if he would never say this out loud, recognizes Subaru as a true friend, and he knows that Subaru did the best he could. Vincent's parting word to Subaru is calling him a fool, which fits both of the characters very well. And I really enjoyed the final scenes between Subaru and Vincent. I think they were one of the most compelling dynamics throughout all of Vollachia. I would say Subaru and Todd and Subaru and Vincent pretty much carried Vollachia for me, and also Al should be mentioned as well. And I just loved this. I thought it was a very, perhaps, a farewell that is cut too short, but it makes sense because we have to move on, and sometimes farewells in life are short, and still, I enjoyed this. I thought it was very real, and I love the dynamic between these two, and once again, I hope to see them together one day. Oh, also, I should mention that Spica is staying in the Empire to help clean up the zombie mess, and Cool, I hope she stays there and never comes back. Moving on. Now, the second half of the book is the alleged quest to find Priscilla's Book of the Dead, and so we return to the Pleiades Watchtower, and I enjoyed the throwbacks to Arc 6, like Subaru asking for milk, and us finally seeing the tower once again. I thought it was hilarious that this time they managed to overcome the desert so easily. They just got there super fast without any problems, and I just love that little detail. It's like doing a new game plus and you already know all of the strategies, so I thought that was super funny. I do have to say though, and this will sound incredibly petty, because it is, but the Ezzo guy really rubbed me the wrong way, because he's just acting all high and mighty, all important, saying he's a senior, talking about the tower like he knows stuff. At one point he says we in the tower or something, and I'm like, we? Who's we? Because I'm sorry, maybe I'm misremembering, but was Ezzo in Arc 6? Did he fight any of the demon beasts? Did he help overcome the desert? Did he fight the witch cult? Did he help stop the rampaging Shaula? Did he fight the most legendary swordsman of all time, Reed? Did he help fight the mighty Volcanica? Because if he didn't, then who's we? There is no we. There is only a little pretend poser loser thinking that he knows stuff when he didn't do any of the work to get to the tower. And I'm sorry I'm heated, but yes, this is petty and childish, but I don't care. I don't like Ezzo. He was talking way too big and did nothing. Let me just regain my composure here. Once again, I am a very grounded reviewer, very down to earth, very calm, very analytical. And so let's get into another one of the new characters introduced in this book. And I say new very loosely here. Clind, everyone's favorite pedo. I'm kidding, we don't know if he is or isn't, but I would report him to the Lugunica police so that they could hopefully investigate and find out. Anyway, you guys know that Clind is a bit of a meme on this channel because he's supposedly Subaru's sensei, and yet he only appears in mentions, in references. He's very mysterious. The only time he appeared in the main story was in volume 26 in a flashback that people in the comments told me was removed in the light novel version. I have not confirmed this, but anyway, Clind is a big meme because the guy keeps getting referenced as this important character, and yet he just never appears in the main story. So, hello Clind, nice to meet you. And I have to say, Clind, there's also something fishy about him because he's just a weird dude. He talks in this speech pattern that is very similar to Sphinx, where he will say a sentence and then end with a word that sort of summarizes the sentence he just said. And I swear, if this is yet another one of Echidna's creations, just how many creatures is Echidna spawning? She has her hands all over the story. Just please, not another one of Echidna's. Despite his quirkiness, and without knowing what happens in the novel next, he seemed nice. He seemed helpful. He seemed less of a psychopath than Roswell. He seems to actually care for people, so let's see if that checks out. And he has this long-range type of teleportation, which is even longer range than Beatrice's. It wasn't quite explained how exactly it worked because Subaru also doesn't know at this moment, but I thought that was very interesting because surely this will be used and abused because as we saw from arcs 4, 6, and 7, Tappei loves teleportation. He has a huge fascination with it, teleporting characters from one place to the other, so I'm sure this will come into play later. So I was looking forward to seeing more from Clind and finally finding out who is this mysterious sensei, and I was disappointed when he didn't come along with the group to the Pleiades Watchtower, so I do hope to see more from him in Arc 9. Don't be shy, homie. Come over here with your monocle. Also, just a quick shout out to Petra. Petra has evolved from a character I did not care about in the slightest to a character that is very interesting. Her growth is immensely compelling to me. She is not only very smart for her age, but she also has this peculiar dynamic where she's the alpha in every single relationship. Meili is pretty much the little sister, and then she was also trying to be the big sister to Flum, saying, hey, you can count on me for everything. And I'm like, damn, Petra is very confident, very assertive. Honestly, I'm a bit sad now that we didn't get any interactions between Priscilla and Petra did mention that in this book because I think that would have been fun. I think they would have gotten along. I think Petra could learn a lot from Priscilla, perhaps also learn a lot of bad habits, but hey, I think it would have been an interesting interaction. I don't know what Tappei's endgame is for Petra yet, but this girl is going places, and I maintain my opinion that she would unironically be a better queen candidate than Emilia. I don't care if this offends some people, it is absolutely true if you think about it from a rational standpoint. This girl is very, very good, and I look forward to seeing what she does. She's even very brave. She's not only very precocious and smart, even though she's a tiny little girl, she's brave. Right at the end, she says to Al that she hates him. Damn, girl. I'm enjoying Petra so much. She's such a fun character. And speaking of Al, let's talk about him. The main character, the man with the helmet, the echidna creation with possibly nefarious intentions. Ever since Arc 7, the author has experimented in the main story from taking the point of view away from Subaru, who had been, up until that point, almost the exclusive point of view throughout the entire story, with a few exceptions here and there. And I think that was just the training grounds for this, because once Al sealed Subaru with the witch spell that was meant for witches, apparently it works better on people with witch factors. Once he did that, not only did Al just become the main villain of this arc, at a meta level he also became the main character. Al is Subaru and now Al is also the main character. This was just poetic on so many levels. And I love reading the story from Al's point of view. It is just so interesting when they went back and showed just how much effort Al went to just gather these exact same conditions, putting every character in the right place. Just he manipulated everyone just to get to this one single outcome. It's so peak. I do wonder why he made a big deal out of Frederica having rare blood. Okay, are we going to expand on that eventually? I hope so, but anyway. Once Al seals Subaru, the whole volume changes. It stops being this sort of slow building character drama and it becomes this intense, frenetic fight, and it's just so good. You see from Al's perspective, even though these were the optimal conditions for succeeding, these were the optimal opponents for him, but he's still just an average dude with a helmet and one single arm. He can't do much necessarily against Garfield and Ezzo, and so he resets so many times to dodge Garfield's fury, to counter Ezzo's spells. This was intense, so intense throughout, and his point of view is so gripping because he is always on the edge of losing. Just one shot and he's gone. It is so great. And not only in terms of action, but in terms of personalities, the character interactions are very compelling. You see that Garfield is a raging freak of nature, but he is still young and immature and easily baitable, and so Al takes advantage of that. He provokes him, he takes away his focus, he prevents him from collaborating and coordinating with Ezzo. And Ezzo is also very smart. He is one of the few people in the series to very easily deduce Al's ability, and that was just fascinating to me. And this scene is a masterpiece because it is so tense throughout, but Al is so much of an underdog and he has to be so resourceful and so smart and try out so many things just to be able to have a chance at winning that I, as the reader, could not help but root for Al, even though I know that he's the main villain and he's screwing over our main character. So this was a very, very interesting dynamic to have as a reader. Even though Al was the villain, I was kind of rooting for him. And Al is usually very cynical, very self-deprecating, but he knows that he's the main character now. He's feeling himself, he's flexing. This is what he says to Garfield. Remember when I said recklessness, the toughest thing to deal with? I lied. Those who don't think ain't a threat to me. The dude is just flexing on them. And he ends the volume in a confrontation with Reinhardt, the Sword Saint himself, the one character everybody in the series respects and is arguably afraid of, and he hits him with the catchphrase, "Your stars were bad." He hit the Sword Saint himself with the catchphrase. And Al is just so cool. I'll be honest, I don't think he did a full heel turn. He's not a full-fledged villain like some of the archbishops, for example. He could do bad things to Petra and Melee, but he didn't. He still seems to be, there's somewhat of a remnant of humanity in him. We don't know yet what he wants. And so, I'll be honest, up until this point, I am enjoying very much Al. I think this is probably the most hyped I've ever been for an arc beginning. I just think he's going to be an exceptional main character, exceptional villain. Once again, we don't know what his objectives are. I'm just loving this so far. I'm incredibly hyped. And it must be said that Al is not only a very interesting character, his authority makes every single action scene absolute cinema, because much like we had with Subaru and Gladiator Gladiator Island and in Chaos Flame. It's just a lot of rapid cuts, very quick successions of resets. Everything is very painful and inherently gritty. It just looks and reads so cool. I'm enjoying his fight scenes so much. I was a bit confused though as to how Al managed to possess Volcanica. I know that he used his own Book of the Dead, but how and when did he do it? Was it something that he had set up previously, much like many of the traps in the library, or was it just something spontaneous? How did he manage to get Volcanica to read the book? Was it just touching? I hope that they explain that in more detail later on. Overall, this volume started slow, but it became unprecedented hype after the Al twist. I have so many questions regarding Al and everything that he's doing. I am rushing to get to the next volume. I think shifting the story's perspective to Al is a very bold move, but one that will pay off and work, in my opinion, without knowing the rest of the volumes, obviously. Because I think that not only are Al and Subaru's authorities very similar, so we get a sort of thematic continuity, but also they are similar but different as characters, because Al is a lot more Machiavellian and he's a lot more willing to do bad things to get what he wants, so that feels fresh, and freshness is exactly what we needed after so many volumes of Vollachia. Everything about this fascinates me so much, from what Al is doing to how the Amelia camp members are going to react to this, to how he and Volcanica are going to escape from Reinhardt, because they're not winning, surely, right? Also, there was a giant plot point that was introduced, in my opinion, in a very silly way. Subaru finds his own Book of the Dead and he wants to hide it, makes sense, but instead of just, putting it in his jacket and hiding it later in a safer place, or just asking Beatrice to send it to the other dimension, because we have already established in Arc 8 that she can later bring things back, so that would be the safest place possible. Instead of doing that, he does one of the most puzzling and stupidest decisions Subaru has ever done in the entire series, and he just puts it on top of a shelf. You know about Chekhov's gun, now it's Subaru's book, because that thing will come into play later 100%. There is zero chance that nobody just ends up finding that book. It's just a question about how many people find that book. I love this volume. I am incredibly excited to see where the story goes from here. My next ReZero video will either be volume 40 or a sort of Vollachia retrospective, although I will probably let that marinate for a bit. I want to get deeper into Arc 9, so be sure to leave your thoughts about this volume in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, ciao!